Hello, everybody. So, this is a part two. I had to split it up because the first part was getting really, really long. So, make sure you watch that first because this video is just going to start in the middle of the ranking video that I recorded already. I hope you enjoy. So, let's jump right into it with the next movie. The next movie is Frozen, which came out in 2013. And this movie was once a huge source of happiness for me and culturally iconic. And after watching it as an adult, it's not very good. I feel bad because I remember loving it as a kid when it came out. But it takes a lot of liberties with the plot, which there isn't really one. There isn't really a plot. And then there's another Disney twist villain, like I talked about with Big Hero 6. And this villain doesn't make any sense at all and wasn't set up to be the villain at all. And it comes out of nowhere. In real life, makes sense that he acts that way. In the story, because one, it's a children's movie, it's an animated movie, there's just decades of animated storytelling cues, and this movie just completely subverts all of that. So it's really hard to believe that he just kind of twists out of nowhere and becomes the villain. Because I think there's only one song, Love is an Open Door, where he like gestures to Arendelle while he says, I want to find my own place. I don't know. It's not like he's saying this is the place that I want. It's more like I want something like this. This movie was enjoyable but mid. The next movie is The Golden Compass, which came out in 2007. This movie was a movie I really enjoyed as a kid. Watching it now gives me nostalgia, but it is definitely structured weirdly and it plays out weirdly and it ends without much satisfaction. And I think they were expecting a sequel or a franchise. So I would give this movie the benefit of the doubt because it was supposed to be the beginning of a story. And I always liked the idea of the movie, but I haven't read the book and or books it was based on because I always remembered watching it and wanting more out of it. And after watching it again, I think it's bad. I know they made like a reboot TV show, which I think I watched like an episode of or so of that, but I got bored. I'm just not a kid anymore who likes fantasy things about children, so the next movie is Happy Feet, which came out in 2006. This movie's good. It's weird and it's out there and really like so strange, really strange. But I've always loved it ever since I was little. I liked all the songs and the characters, and I liked the story and the ending and the themes and the parallels and whatever. I love it. It's not one of my favorites right now, so I think I'll put it in the good tier. The next movie is called The Host, which came out in 2013. I don't think I read the book. The movie was enjoyable to me as a teenager, but now it reads as very gross and predatory. The story is like meek. It's simplistic and it doesn't say much, and watching it now just proves that it's bad. The next movie is The Hunger Games, which came out in 2012. This movie was good and started an era of movies made for young adults that I just happened to be the perfect age for. And The Hunger Games was horrifying, but special. And it had a great message despite a forced romantic plot. The next movie is The Hunger Games Catching Fire, which came out in 2013. This is another one of my cats. So The Hunger Games Catching Fire. Okay, so this movie is genuinely great. I think Catching Fire was my favorite movie of the Hunger Games trilogy. Uh, I think it expanded on the first movie very well, and it was like tragic but really triumphant. And I think it really captured the essence of revolution and encapsulated the themes of martyrdom and rebellion really well. Um, this one is one I can come back to again and again because the plot is enthralling and complex without being confusing. And I think the ending's good, but it falls flat because of the movies that came after, which isn't really this movie's fault, but the movies after really failed it. The next movie is The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1, which came out in 2014. This movie's bad. I don't like it, and I don't ever want to watch it again. The next movie is The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2, which came out in 2015. This movie is also bad. I don't like it, and I don't ever want to watch it again. It sucks that I own both of them forever. Yay. The next movie is The Incredibles, which came out in 2004. This movie is great, and so many people have talked about it, and I don't really want to repeat things that have been said a million times. The next movie is Inglourious Basterds, which came out in 2009. This movie's good. I like Quentin Tarantino movies, so it's kind of a given for me. But Inglourious Basterds is written really well, and each character has depth and history, which I love. It's a little long, and sometimes it's hard for me to get into, but I do find it satisfying, and I realize that I have to be in the mood to watch it all at once. The next movie is Interview with the Vampire, which came out in 1994. This movie's mid, but enjoyable. I haven't read the book or books, and I like the story, but it does start all melodramatic and it's a little bit annoying, and it takes a while to get going. But I do like the narrative framing device with Louis telling the story to the reporter, so we can cut away at times and skip stuff that isn't necessary. So I do feel like I was missing some context, and the movie does end as if another one is coming after, but it's not. So it's not super satisfying at the end. And I know there's a show reboot readaptation. I haven't watched it. Not that I don't want to. I guess I don't want to. I don't really have any interest in the show because I don't watch the movie that much anyway. So this movie is Kung Fu Panda 2, which came out in 2011, and I think it's an amazing extension of the first movie, with its themes and a scary and compelling villain, which was very different than the first villain, so it doesn't feel like the movie kind of repeats itself. But it is hard to say that this movie is better than the first, but it's definitely great. And I think if I had bought the first movie and the first movie was on the list, they would both be in the great tier. The next movie is called The Last Samurai, and it came out in 2003. And this movie's great and beautiful, and I don't want to spoil anything about it. The next movie is The Lego Movie, which came out in 2014. This movie is very overwhelming, and I liked it, but there are many things that I dislike. I think The Lego Movie is mid but enjoyable, and it's new and exciting, and it's hilarious and it's fun, but it is really overwhelming at times, and it's a little grating, and it does go by really fast. So there's a lot of details and plot things that just, they're gone. The next movie is The Little Mermaid 2, Return to the Sea. And this movie came out in 2000. This movie's another sequel that I don't really like, because aside from a very tiny peek into Ariel's longing for the ocean at the beginning, it's a copy paste of the original movie, but worse. And it's bad. The next movie is The Little Vampire, which came out in 2000 also. This movie's really fun. It's a little bit childish now that I'm older, but it is a fun, enjoyable romp. My only problems with it are that the vampire stuff isn't really utilized all that well. The villain was a bit annoying, and the ending was and it still is confusing to me. The whole movie feels like it was just this one kid's imagination and like didn't actually happen. So that's kind of sad because I hate when movies are like, it was all a dream or nothing happened. I think it goes in enjoyable but mid. The next movie is called Lucky Number 11, and this movie came out in 2006. I will not say anything of substance about this movie because I refuse to spoil it. It's great and one of my favorites. It was marketed entirely wrong and has a shocking 52% on Rotten Tomatoes. But watch this movie and enjoy it, and do not watch the trailer for it first. Watch the movie and then watch the trailer, and then you'll understand. Because if you had seen the trailer like so many people did before they watched the movie, you would realize that the movie that the trailer presents is not the movie that the movie is. The next movie is Minions, which came out in 2015. This movie's bad, and I don't want to watch it again. The next movie is Moana, which came out in 2016. This movie was creative and showed me a new culture, which was really cool. And I liked the music, I liked the animation, and the story was moving. It was about change and self acceptance, which was awesome. The movie employed Polynesians and had experts on their own culture come in and help them figure out what the village should look like and the people and the clothing and everything. And I think the project was really cool. But the issue I have with the movie is not the movie itself. It's an issue I have with the studio that made the movie. A certain high-pitched mouse that has spent the last decade remaking all of the Renaissance era movies such as The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and Mulan. This studio has ruined several of these movies. And as of writing this, which was November 17th, 2025, oh my god, just 5 months ago. So as of writing and as of filming this, um, a live action remake of Moana was announced to release summer of 2026. So in just a few months, because it's March 18th right now. So not only is this particular studio refusing to create new ideas and give audiences new stories to fall in love with, they are remaking a movie that is barely 10 years old. So this upsets me on a fundamental and inexplicable level. And this movie is now one I don't want to watch anymore. I will not be watching the live action. Anyway, yeah, there's that. Sorry to get all preachy on you. The next movie is called Mr. Peabody and Sherman. And this movie came out in 2014. And it's an adaptation of an animated show. The movie is very, very fun. It's got great jokes. It's a time travel movie that utilizes the time travel in a way that isn't super confusing like a lot of time travel movies. It doesn't break under the tiniest little pressure, and it is very interesting to watch. And it is like a history lesson. There's a ton of history things to learn in this movie. Not all of them are accurate, but I feel like Mr. Peabody as a character is someone that will explain things in an accurate way, which is nice because we get to learn with Sherman. And I think the girl character, forget her name, she's a little annoying, and I think she's supposed to be that way. What I don't love is that the two kids are like 10 and they're given like a romantic subplot. It could be friendship, but it also kind of feels romantic, so that's weird. And I think this movie is great for kids, but through the adult lens that I discussed before, I think it's just good. The next movie is called Mr. Right. This movie came out in 2016. It's very fun. It's an interesting story, and I think it's structured really uniquely. And not everything's spoon fed to us, which I like. And the story moves fast, but I think it's cool and it's well written. It's pretty realistic for what it is. And it does feel like a little long towards the end. But it is a fantastic ride. It's not like a traditional action movie, which I like. And this movie is one of my favorites. The next movie is Napoleon Dynamite. This movie came out in 2004. If you haven't seen Napoleon Dynamite, I think something's wrong with you. On the other hand, if you haven't seen this movie and you think it's boring, you might be right. This movie isn't for everyone. If you haven't seen this movie and all people do is hype it up to you, you might be disappointed when you try to watch it. The thing about this movie is that you just have to watch it. You'll find out the consensus on it, that people say it's a culturally iconic movie with great jokes and a great period piece on the early 2000s, which some people say that the time period's hard to decipher, or you'll see that the movie isn't for you. Since these are my opinions, I think the movie's great. It's funny, it's quotable, and the characters are interesting, but weird. But an interesting weird, not a bad weird. The next movie is The Prestige, which came out in 2006. I've heard many things about this movie, and the two YouTube reviews I've seen of it has said it was derivative and horribly predictable and bad. That this movie doesn't have the sauce. That Christopher Nolan is an overhyped Englishman who makes movies that aren't creative and don't say anything in any particular way. I think Nolan's films are imperfect and they lack a directorial style, but they make up for it in creativity and story. He uses editing and story to create emotional films that shock, satisfy, and for some people, confuse. Tenet was very confusing. I will say that. The first time I thought I got it, the second time I did. But people I watched it with were like, I don't know what the hell that movie was about. Anyway, The Prestige is a movie I don't really want to spoil. It has twists, it has great characters, it has an intriguing mystery, and it has a satisfying ending. But it is, I mean, it's like a magic trick, which that's good because it's a movie about magicians. I think on the first watch, this movie feels a little incomplete, and it's like a shock for shock's sake. But I think a rewatch lets all the pieces fall into place and make sense. Um, and this movie is one I'll come back to again and again because it is well put together and endlessly rewatchable, which I feel like that's a good goal for movies to have. Because I feel like in the past, when you could only see it in theaters, there were no DVDs or there were TV reruns, people weren't rewatching movies endlessly. But now we have the ability to rewatch a movie endlessly. And there are so many forms. You can have a VHS, you can have a DVD, you can have it on streaming, or you can own it digitally. And I really enjoy a movie that I can rewatch because if I like a movie, I want to watch it again. And the movies that you never want to watch again, those suck because it's an art form that it just didn't connect with you. And this is art. The Princess Bride came out in 1987. I think it's one of the oldest movies I have on this list. The Princess Bride is another one of those movies where if you don't like it or you haven't seen it, I think something's wrong with you. It's a classic movie. It's a great adaptation of yet another book I haven't read, but I want to read. The movie's funny, witty, it's executed well, and it's cheesy. It's a product of its time, but it's a great product. I've also been watching Columbo a lot, which has Peter Falk in it, and The Princess Bride has Peter Falk in it. And so I'm really appreciating him a little bit more. And I really like Columbo. I really like that show. Anyway, great movie. Next. The next movie is called Promising Young Woman. This movie came out in 2020. This movie is a movie that I have so many thoughts on, and I haven't been able to fully think about or verbalize those thoughts. This movie is about grief, rage, and revenge. And it was something special when I saw it. It was a horror without being scary like The Conjuring or Friday the 13th. This movie was about real, actual human problems. And not just human problems, but specifically women's problems. This movie came out at a time where no one was going to theaters, but critics loved it. And it actually grossed $18 million at the box office. And the budget was $10 million, so it didn't really break even, but it won an Oscar. I don't really take that much stock in Oscars, but like it's supposed to be a good thing that a movie gets an Oscar, so I guess that's fine. But this movie was harsh and it was brutal and it was scary and I found it fascinating. I watched it a couple times a year and it's like a gut punch every single time. This is one of those movies that needed to be made. It's one of those movies that needs to be seen, and I love the directing, the camera work, and character decisions. And the ending hurts, obviously. I'm not going to spoil it, but it is worth it. The movie's worth it, not the ending specifically, but the movie's worth it. And I think this is another movie that's great. The next movie is the oldest movie I have on this list, and it's called Psycho. And it came out in 1960. And I'm talking about the original Psycho, not the remake. I feel like with this movie, there isn't a lot to say about it. The first time I watched it, I was glued to the screen and thankfully removed from the decades of hype and built up lore and all that stuff that ruins movies for people. I got to watch this movie without knowing anything about it, except for, of course, the most important part of it, the ending, because everyone has spoiled the ending a million times, which I'm not going to do. But, you know, it's the twist that makes this movie the supposed cinematic masterpiece everyone says it is, or at least everyone has said for the past 65 years. And I think this movie is a cinematic masterpiece. I was frustrated with what happened to the main character, but as soon as the movie shifted to be about her, but not from her perspective, I thought it elevated itself from good to great. I don't rewatch this movie often, so I don't think it's one of my favorites, but it's definitely a great movie. The next movie is Rise of the Guardians, which came out in 2012. This movie was fine. I think it was animated well. It was sweet, but the villain was stupid. Like I was thinking, why am I watching this movie? It's pandering and elusive, but in a frustrating way. And I liked the character arcs and the interactions between the characters, and the jokes were nice. But I just can't fall in love with this movie, and now as an adult, I don't think I can fall in love with it. So I think it's mid, but enjoyable. The next movie is Rise of the Planet of the Apes, which came out in 2011. This movie is not great. um, it's the beginning chapter to a story that I love, which I've already spoken about. And the visual effects are good, but not perfect. It takes a little bit to get used to the visual effects in this movie. And I think the story is decent, but it does feel slightly incomplete or unfinished. It feels like there should be a lot more to it, but it's not a total detriment. And I like the movie, I like the story. It just feels like the movie is too long for this particular story. And I like this movie, I really do, but I just want so much more out of it every time. And it has such great moments, and Caesar as a character is really compelling. But when I look at it as a whole, it just doesn't feel right. So I think this movie is mid but enjoyable. The next movie is Rocky 3, which came out in 1982. This movie is one of those movies that you're either going to hate it or love it. And I think it's in the middle of the series, so just watching it by itself makes it a little lacking in places. A lot of people rag on this movie because 40% of it is montages, and it's set to rock songs, and it's so predictable because our underdog main character loses a fight and then trains and then wins. It's formulaic and dumb and stupid. But I disagree. I like this movie. I like the music, I like the characters, I like the plot. I like that this movie is a departure from the previous two. He loses all hope, and then he wants to quit, and his wife wants him to quit. But then, when training with Apollo, he fails and he just can't get it. And then he and his wife have this talk, and it turns the movie on its head, and it's so well written. It's on the nose, but it's perfect. I will always love the Rocky movies, and this one is by far my favorite. The next movie is School of Rock, which came out in 2003, the year I was born. Don't you feel old yet? This is a great movie, and if you say otherwise, you're wrong. It's a 10 out of 10, and it goes on my favorites tier. The next movie is called The Shape of Water, and it came out in 2017. So I've seen The Shape of Water a lot, several times. And I think it's a sweet little story, and it's almost like a fairy tale, the way it opens. And I really like the sign language in it. I personally, just a little side rant here. I've been really interested in sign language since I was a kid. I actually have Signing for Dummies on my shelf here. It's somewhere. Signing for Dummies. So I taught myself sign language when I was younger. I actually just finished a sign language class, so that was awesome. And most of the sign language in this movie is actually real American Sign Language, from what I can see. I don't know if it's entirely accurate, but most of the sign language is. And this movie is directed by Guillermo del Toro, and I really like that he saw the creature from the Black. I really like that he saw the creature from the Black Lagoon and decided that he needed a girlfriend. And I really just wish there was more. And I think it goes in the great tier. This movie is called Sherlock Holmes, and this movie came out in 2009. I recently rewatched the famous H. Bomber Guy video essay about Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock is garbage, and here's why. Everything he said in that video is perfect and correct. There's a part of the video where he talks about how the show Sherlock doesn't allow the audience to learn or solve any of the crimes in the episodes, using A Study in Pink as his main example. Sherlock enters a room with a dead body, makes a bunch of assumptions based on a dirty wedding ring, and then runs off before explaining to the other characters or teaching the audience anything. This includes more examples where Sherlock just shows up with the answers he found off screen, or he gets information handed to him out of nowhere because the plot needs him to know. It honestly has a hatred for letting the audience solve anything along with or before Sherlock can. So I say all of that to get to my point. The Sherlock Holmes movie is absolutely awful at giving the audience any information to try and let us solve the crime. While I was watching, I knew that the villain, Lord Blackwood, had done everything. He didn't do it with magic, but I had no idea how. We are shown everything vaguely, and not given a single glimpse into Sherlock's mind to see how he figured it out until the very end of the movie, where he monologues to Blackwood. This is where Sherlock tells him how he did everything, as well as showing the audience clips we've never seen to prove Sherlock is getting things right. So that is infuriating to me. With the benefit of rewatches, the Sherlock Holmes movie does give you information, it just doesn't explain any of it. So, like, there's a scene where a guy is killed in a copper bathtub, and it's not really explained how until the end. But the movie was a massive box office hit when it came out, and I think Guy Ritchie's directing was perfect. The music was perfect, and the movie now has a rating of 70% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 7.5 on IMDb. So, passing in most of the world. While the story of the movie was imperfect and a bit stumbling, I absolutely love this movie. I think I will revisit it over and over again because I think it's good. The next movie is called Sherlock Holmes, A Game of Shadows, which came out in 2011. This is where everything I said about the previous movie is recontextualized. This movie adds more, including allowing the audience to piece some things together with Sherlock while maintaining some secrets to allow for surprises later. The movie has perfect editing, along with this amazing through line of unique camera moves and the most fascinating depiction of thought I've ever seen in movies. Every time I watch it, I can't be peeled away. I have to finish the movie. This movie is much more believable and understandable than the first, and much more compelling. It's definitely a really good sequel. The ending shocks me every single time, and I hope they make their planned third movie and that it's just as good as the second one. I think Sherlock Holmes: A Game of Shadows is probably my favorite movie out of all of these movies I've talked about so far. The next movie is The Sixth Sense, which came out in 1999. This movie is one that I will not spoil, but it's great. The next movie is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and this movie came out in 2018. This movie's really good. I feel like all of the content surrounding this movie that I've seen overhyped it a little for me, but the movie's really unique and it's good, but it's also cliche. Some of that is kind of the point, but with the second movie out and proving that this story can be truly great, the first movie gets demoted a little in my head, goes in the good tier. The next movie is Spider Man No Way Home, which came out in 2021. This movie was mid, but enjoyable. I loved to see my favorite Spider Man again. The rest of the story was okay. I feel like it was meandering and too long, and it only works if both Doctor Strange and Peter are idiots. And Peter, I can see him being an idiot. But Doctor Strange, I don't really understand why he's being an idiot. But the movie also ended in a way I didn't really like. And I wanted to highlight a video I watched about this movie by a YouTuber called CJ the X. And he talks about the movie in excruciating detail. I'm pretty sure the video is called No Way Home Was Kind of Sexist. I will link it in the description. This movie was another movie like Endgame that felt more like an event rather than a movie. The next movie is called Spirit, Stallion of the Cimarron, and this movie came out in 2002. This movie is not only a childhood favorite of mine, but a current favorite. It's simple, but it's mature and artistic. While the narration isn't necessary, I don't mind it. It can just be like a little bit of a, hey man, do you have to? But at the same time, as a child, it did help me to understand what people were supposed to be thinking, because I struggle with understanding the meaning behind facial expressions and how they fit with how someone's thinking. But yeah, I like this movie. It has great themes. I love the parallels. And it ignited my love for Westerns. The next movie is called Step Brothers, and Step Brothers came out in 2008. This is a Will Ferrell movie that I have good memories of, but ultimately I have to put it into the mid but enjoyable tier. The story is pretty drawn out and quite simplistic. And the jokes are decent, but a little too aggressively raunchy and much too awkward. I tried to watch it with my then boyfriend, now husband, and we had to stop it 20 minutes in because the movie made him way too uncomfortable. And watching it now, the humor in the first half of the movie is something to be endured to reach the end of a story that is only partly satisfying. It's quotable. There are funny parts, but there are some parts that I'm just like, ugh, do we have to watch this again? Do we have to watch this part? You know? So yeah, mid but enjoyable. The next movie is Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby, and this movie came out in 2006. I'm speaking specifically about the unrated version. That's the only version I've seen all the way through. This is another Will Ferrell movie that I'm conflicted about. And I think the beginning of the unrated version is much better at establishing the story than the theatrical version, which I've seen the first part of. The middle of the movie is perfect. The ending fumbles very slightly in the unrated version. Because a lot of the jokes before the final race are a little tedious. I think if this version of the movie was edited very slightly to keep resolutions and character beats but remove the meandering jokes that don't really add anything, I feel like it would be great. But regardless of that, this movie is a favorite of mine. I love watching Talladega Nights. The next movie is Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2. This movie came out in 2012, and this movie was mid, but really enjoyable. It's way too long, and it has a lot of gross things with a certain werewolf, but it's bad at the same time. I mean, overall, the movie was mid. It's really normal when compared to the rest of the series, which ranges from like interesting to terrible. I liked that this movie gave Bella more agency, but I just don't believe her romance with Edward or Jacob at all. Like her and Edward are supposed to be married in this movie, and I don't see it. I don't get it at all. I don't get what she sees in him. She just thinks he's pretty. You married him and you just think he's pretty? I don't get it. But yeah, mid but enjoyable. It's a fun watch, but after you're done, you're like, wow, that was kind of bad. The next movie is Twilight Eclipse, which came out in 2010. This movie was bad, but I did read the book, and I feel like the movie did a better job with the story than the book did. After reading the book and watching the movie, I don't like either. The story sucks, the characters suck, and the plot sucks. And I hate that Victoria was recast. I loved the original actress. I thought she looked perfect. And they just put whatever her name is and this dumb wig, and it looks awful. She looks like a costume now. So that really bothers me. But this movie is just plain bad. It lost the aesthetics of the first movie, the like the subtle like indie charm, and nothing happens in it. I mean, Bella has no agency ever. Edward is dull and annoying, and Jacob is literally the exact same. He's dull and annoying. And I dislike this movie so greatly, and I never want to watch it again. I don't care about anything in it at all. The next movie is War for the Planet of the Apes, which came out in 2017. This movie is really hard for me to judge, and I really dislike the first half, maybe the first third. But I love, love, love the character of Bad Ape. I think he's a perfect character. He's hilarious, he's sad, and he's played perfectly by the notoriously underrated comedy actor Steve Zahn. The movie expands on the second movie's ideas and follows through on the war started in it by Coda. And he haunts this movie like he haunts Caesar. But I didn't really like the humans in this movie, and I felt like they needed to be different. Like the first movie, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, this movie has great moments, but as a whole, it's just not up there. So I think I'll put it in mid but enjoyable. The next movie is Warfare, which came out in 2025. I bought this movie so my husband could watch it, and I engaged during some of it, but it was entirely too gory and tense for me to get invested or care about it. And this is a movie I never want to watch again. The actors did great, and I'm glad that people made a movie that they liked, and I'm glad my husband enjoyed it. But I am not the audience for this movie, and I never ever want to watch it, even from the corner of my eye. ever again. The next movie is What We Do in the Shadows, and this movie came out in 2015. This movie's perfectly funny. It's structured a bit weird, but it's good. It's definitely better than mid, but it's not quite great. So, it's good. I liked this movie, and I continue to rewatch it, and I think it's a funny satire or parody of vampires and other vampire movies. And it does feel like it's missing stuff. Like it feels like there's things that should be there but aren't. So I like it, but I don't love it. The next movie is Whiplash, which came out in 2014. And this is a movie I've seen once. And I liked it, I enjoyed it, but I feel like I didn't like get it. I think that it's an interesting exploration of rage, passion, and a person's limits, but I feel like I just didn't really engage fully with it. Like I have to watch it again and then I'll say more about it. But I remember why I bought this movie, and it was because I was watching this video essay that compares Black Swan and Whiplash. And Black Swan's a movie that obviously I've seen a few times and I like it, so I thought maybe Whiplash would be the same. It was comparing the themes in Black Swan and the themes in Whiplash about perfectionism. I remembered watching that video and thinking Black Swan was the superior movie, and they both discuss some similar themes, but I think Black Swan's more interesting and it meets me at my level a little bit more. And I think Whiplash is good, but it's just not for me. The last movie is called Your Name. So Your Name came out in 2016. Well, at least the copyright says 2016. So I think it came out in 2016. This movie is an anime, and it's great. I like it a lot, and I think it's a wonderful story about love. And it does feel like a little contrived, like the things that happen because the script tells them to happen. And I don't know if this one's based on a book or a manga, but it does feel a little messy or chaotic. I mean, like, it's fine. I like it. It's about teenagers, so they're gonna act like teenagers. And it does have good moments, and it's good throughout, but it never loses my attention. I think the animation's great, the characters are great. I like how the story kind of twists a little bit, and I think it wraps up really well. And I like that the supernatural aspects aren't entirely explained. I like that how like in the real world we can experience things that we can attribute to a supernatural entity, but we don't really know how to explain how it happens. Like the Mandela effect. There was the logo where people thought it had a cornucopia on it and fruit, but it doesn't have a cornucopia. It's just the fruit. Fruit of the Loom. That's what it's called. The Fruit of the Loom logo, where everyone's like, I'm sure that it had a cornucopia on it, but it doesn't. It's just the fruit. I don't really know if there was a cornucopia, but it seems like maybe people think there was. I don't know. It's interesting. But that's kind of a thing that, like in a movie, that would be like a supernatural thing that happens, but you can't explain it. In the real world, I think there's an explanation of like they changed it. They didn't say anything about it. What I don't like is that the evidence of the events of the story just kind of vanishes. I assume that it's the result of essentially time travel, but it feels random and a little unnecessary. And it makes the ending better, but I would believe the ending if they still had evidence of their interactions, aside from only the bracelet cord that Taki wears, because that's the only evidence that they met each other. But there's no other evidence that anything else happened. So I don't know. It's a little weird. Anyway, I hope that you liked hearing about my opinions and that they made sense. And I wrote it all down instead of talking for an hour and then trying to figure out what I'm saying while I'm editing. And I know who knew you could make videos coherent before filming and editing them. I had no idea. I just must be an idiot or something. Anyway, Yeah, so thanks for watching my video. I did add more I bought more movies since I made this list. But maybe I'll do those in a different video because this one's probably going to be like 3 hours. So, yeah. Thanks for watching. Bye.